Edit the black glass elevator opened, and Adrian Vale saw Serafina Moretti already watching him across a room full of predators. Gold lights spilled from chandeliers shaped like fractured halos, sliding over polished obsidian floors and the silver masks worn by buyers who had paid $50,000 just to enter the Moretti auction. Somewhere behind the string quartet, crystal chimed against crystal. Beneath it all ran the deeper hum of alpha pheromones, cedar, smoke, expensive cologne, territorial warning layered thick enough to taste. Adrian stepped out without breaking stride. His tuxedo fit like armor, his forged invitation rested inside his jacket, and a wafer-thin data key pressed cold against his ribs. Tonight, Serafina's private ledger would pass through the vault behind the auction hall for exactly 7 minutes. 7 minutes was all he needed to dismantle the network she had spent 12 years building. Then Serafina rose from her chair. Conversation thinned around her without anyone asking it to. She wore black instead of the Moretti family's traditional crimson, no diamonds except a narrow silver ring on one hand, and no visible weapon. She did not need one. Her presence moved through the room like a blade drawn slowly from velvet. Adrian had studied photographs of her for months, but photographs had never captured the precision of her stillness or the strange amber note beneath her scent, something warm buried under gunmetal and dark roses. Her gaze stayed on him half a second too long. Adrian lifted a champagne flute from a passing tray and turned toward the display cases as if he had come to spend money. A sapphire necklace, a stolen Renaissance sketch, a sealed envelope containing voting records capable of ending 3 political careers. None of it mattered. At 11:17, a Moretti security officer opened the corridor beside the north wall. Adrian counted the guards by reflection in the glass case. 1, 2, 3. Serafina appeared beside him before he could move. "You're not bidding," she said. Her voice was low enough to disappear beneath the violin, but every word landed cleanly. Adrian looked at the sapphire instead of her. "Nothing has impressed me yet. That usually means a man came here wanting something that isn't for sale." The corner of her mouth shifted. Not a smile. A measurement. He turned then, letting their eyes meet. Up close, Serafina was more dangerous because she did not perform danger. No raised voice. No theatrical threats. Just a woman standing 12 inches away while 200 powerful people unconsciously gave her space. "And what do you think I want?" Adrian asked. Her gaze dropped briefly to his left cuff, where the stitching concealed a transmitter, then returned to his face. "I haven't decided." A bell sounded from the central platform. The auctioneer announced the first lot, and heads turned. Adrian used the movement. He set down his untouched champagne, slipped through the shifting crowd, and reached the north corridor before the nearest guard looked back. The temperature dropped immediately. Marble became steel beneath his shoes. Perfume gave way to cold air and the faint electrical smell of security equipment. He passed one camera during its programmed 3-second blackout, pressed the data key against a maintenance panel, and watched a green line crawl across its surface. 30 seconds. 29. Footsteps clicked behind him. Not the heavy stride of a guard. Slower. Deliberate. Adrian removed the key and turned. Serafina stood at the mouth of the corridor, gold ballroom light burning behind her like fire around a silhouette. She glanced at the maintenance panel, then at the hand Adrian had already lowered toward his jacket. "Interesting," she murmured. Somewhere in the auction hall, the music stopped. A sharp crack echoed through the ballroom, followed by shouting and the sudden metallic slam of security doors. Serafina did not look back. Instead, she stepped toward the man who had entered her house to destroy her, her eyes narrowing as red emergency lights began pulsing across the steel walls. "Whatever you came here to steal," she said, "you just became much more valuable than it is." Edit the second shot shattered a chandelier, and Serafina moved before the first crystal struck the floor. She caught Adrian by the sleeve and dragged him sideways as glittering fragments rained across the ballroom entrance, their sharp tinkling swallowed by alarms and the thunder of security doors locking into place. Red emergency lights pulsed over her face. The air smelled of hot wiring, spilled champagne, and the bitter surge of alpha pheromones from the crowd beyond. Adrian twisted free. "I can handle myself." "I noticed." Serafina's eyes flicked toward the maintenance panel he had been touching seconds earlier. "That's why you're coming with me." Another crack sounded from the ballroom. Adrian saw movement through the doorway. Guests crouching behind auction tables. Moretti guards forming a barrier around the central platform. One dark figure pushing against the flow instead of away from it. The attacker raised an arm. Adrian reacted. He seized Serafina around the waist, pulled her behind a marble column, then kicked a fallen serving cart into the corridor entrance. Silver trays crashed across the floor just as the attacker reached them, forcing the masked figure to stumble backward into two advancing guards. Serafina looked down at Adrian's hand still gripping her arm. He released her immediately. Lucky reflex. Men with lucky reflexes don't usually disable my cameras. Before he could answer, she stepped back into the ballroom. Adrian should have run. The north corridor was open behind him. The ledger was less than 40 feet away, and chaos had stripped Serafina's security system of half its eyes. His entire ruthless plan had been built for an opportunity exactly like this. Instead, he followed her. Serafina climbed onto the auction platform while armed guards swept the exits. Gold light flickered overhead where the damaged chandelier swung from its chain, throwing moving shadows across 200 frightened faces. "Nobody leaves," she said. She did not shout. She didn't need to. The room quieted until Adrian could hear broken glass grinding beneath someone's shoe. Serafina pointed at him. "You. Here." Every face turned. Adrian remained where he was. That sounded like an order. It was, "I don't take yours." Something changed in the room. Several alphas straightened. A guard's hand moved toward his holster. Serafina descended from the platform, each heel striking the obsidian floor with a clean, measured click. She stopped directly in front of Adrian, close enough that he caught gunmetal and dark roses beneath the smoke. "Someone entered my house believing tonight's confusion would isolate me," she said. "Instead, I'm going to give them something else to think about." Adrian's jaw tightened. "And I'm supposed to volunteer?" Serafina reached for his wrist. He caught her hand before she touched him. The room inhaled as one. Her amber eyes dropped to his fingers around hers. Adrian expected the guards to move. Serafina only tilted her head. Then she turned their locked hands outward so everyone could see them. "You belong beside me," she snarled. Silence hit harder than the alarms had. Adrian understood instantly what she had done. In this city, an alpha mafia head did not publicly place an unknown man at her side without meaning. Protection. Preference. Claim. By sunrise, every syndicate in the city would believe Adrian Vale belonged to Serafina Moretti's inner circle. His cover had just become both stronger and infinitely more dangerous. "Careful," Adrian murmured. "People might believe you." "I'm counting on it." Serafina released his hand and addressed the room. "Anyone who wants to reach me tonight reaches him first." Adrian stared at her profile. She had turned an intruder into a shield with one sentence, and given him access his months of planning could never have purchased. The ledger could wait. For the first time, standing beside Serafina offered him a cleaner path to destroying her than stealing from the shadows. He stepped onto the platform beside her. Serafina's gaze slid toward him, satisfied for exactly one heartbeat. Adrian leaned close enough that only she could hear him. "Fine. I'll stand beside you." His voice dropped beneath the returning alarm. "But don't mistake that for surrender." "I wouldn't dream of it," she said. Then Serafina handed him the keycard to her private elevator. The private elevator opened onto Serafina's war room, and Adrian walked inside carrying the key to her destruction in his pocket. Cold, white light ran beneath a 20-foot wall of black glass, illuminating a steel table covered with tablets, encrypted phones, and a glowing map of the city divided into Moretti territories. The room smelled faintly of cedar polish and dark coffee, but Serafina's gunmetal and rose scent followed him through the doors. Behind them, the elevator sealed with a soft hydraulic hiss. Adrian placed her keycard on the table. "You give every stranger access to this floor?" Serafina removed her silver ring and set it beside a tablet. "Only strangers who drag me out of danger and then threaten me in the same 10 minutes. She tapped the screen. Security feeds appeared across the glass wall. "Sit beside me." Adrian remained standing. "You enjoy that word." "Beside." Her eyes lifted. "You seem to understand it downstairs." Adrian pulled out the chair at her right anyway. It put him less than 3 feet from the encrypted terminal connected to the ledger network. Exactly where his plan needed him. Serafina began issuing instructions through an earpiece while Adrian watched reflections instead of screens. Guards clearing the auction floor. Guests being escorted into secure rooms. Nothing demanded his attention until Serafina pushed a tablet toward him. On it were photographs of 6 dock workers and their families. "They leave Pier 9 tonight," she said. "Why show me?" "Because everyone downstairs thinks you're mine now. That makes your face useful." She handed him a sealed envelope. "Take this to my driver. Those families crossed the city under your protection." Adrian did not touch it. Pier 9 belonged to a district his own faction had marked for seizure once Moretti fell. The briefing had described the people there as syndicate assets. Serafina was moving them out before retaliation could reach them. "You're evacuating civilians," he said. Her gaze sharpened. "Children don't become soldiers because their parents unload my ships." A muted tone sounded from Adrian's hidden transmitter. His window. The ledger terminal had begun its scheduled synchronization. 90 seconds. He rose with the envelope, crossed behind Serafina, and deliberately brushed the steel table hard. Enough to send her coffee toward the floor. She caught the cup. Adrian's other hand moved. The data key slipped beneath the terminal and flashed once. Green. Copying. "Clumsy," Serafina said. "Occupational hazard." "What occupation?" Adrian met her eyes. "Tonight? Apparently yours." For one dangerous second, neither moved. Then a guard's voice came through her earpiece. Serafina turned toward the window. Adrian glanced down. 60%. 70. 80. The screen beside Serafina displayed a transfer order. Moretti funds redirected into emergency housing accounts for the Pier 9 families. Not weapons. Not bribes. Homes. Adrian's fingers hovered over the key. His original plan required everything. Accounts, routes, names. Enough information to collapse Serafina's organization and let his people seize what remained. 92%. A second file appeared in the synchronization queue. Protected identities of the evacuated families. Adrian's jaw locked. If he copied it, those names would travel with the ledger. He pulled the key early. The light died at 94%. Serafina turned back. "Problem." Adrian closed his fist around the device. "Your driver is waiting." Minutes later, the elevator carried them down into a private garage washed in blue fluorescent light. Engines idled beneath concrete beams, filling the cool air with gasoline and warm rubber. Serafina expected him to hand over the envelope. Instead, Adrian opened the armored SUV himself. "I'm going with them." Her brows lifted. "That wasn't the instruction. You made me your shield in front of 200 people." He climbed into the passenger seat. Might as well make the lie convincing. The door remained open. Serafina stood outside, studying him through the blue light. Adrian felt the incomplete data key against his ribs. 6% missing, because for the first time since he began planning Serafina Moretti's ruin, he had deliberately chosen not to take everything he could. She leaned one hand against the doorframe. "Be back before midnight." Adrian looked at her. Another order? A warning. Her voice lowered. "If you intend to destroy me, Adrian, you should stop giving me reasons to trust you." The use of his real name froze his hand on the seat belt. Serafina shut the door before he could answer. Adrian returned at 11:43 p.m. to find Serafina alone beneath the amber lights of the Moretti penthouse, pouring 2 glasses of water as if she had not just called him by a name he had never given her. The elevator doors closed behind him with a velvet soft hiss. His shoes carried traces of dock dust across the polished stone, and cold night air still clung to his coat, mixed with diesel from the convoy. Serafina pushed one glass across the counter. Adrian ignored it. "How long?" he asked. "Long enough." She took a measured sip. "The families. Safe." Then tonight accomplished something useful. Adrian's hand tightened around the incomplete data key inside his pocket. "You knew my name, and you still came back." Before he could answer, the penthouse lights blinked once. A tiny sound followed from somewhere behind Serafina. Click. Adrian's gaze snapped toward the mirrored wall. He had heard that sound before in training rooms. A magnetic lock disengaging where no lock should exist. A narrow service door behind Serafina had opened half an inch. Someone inside the Moretti residence had authorized it. Serafina saw his eyes move. "What?" Adrian crossed the room instead of answering. The service door swung wider. A masked figure stepped through. Adrian drove the marble fruit bowl off the counter with his forearm. It struck the floor between them with an explosive crack, scattering oranges and fragments of stone. The intruder recoiled. Adrian grabbed Serafina's wrist and pulled her behind the kitchen island as a suppressed shot punched into the cabinet where she had been standing. The room filled with the sharp scent of scorched wood. "Stay down." Serafina stared at him. "You're giving me orders in my own home? Complain later." Adrian snatched the metal serving tray from the counter and hurled it toward the mirrored wall. The reflection shattered into movement. The attacker turned instinctively toward the noise. Serafina used the opening. She rose, crossed 6 feet in 3 quick steps, and slammed the emergency. Security switched beside the column. Steel shutters dropped over every exit with a deafening crash. The intruder spun toward the service door, but it sealed first. Moretti guards were already pounding toward the penthouse from the stairwell. Adrian caught the attacker's arm before another shot could be fired, twisted the weapon away, and sent it skidding beneath the dining table. Serafina kicked it farther out of reach. Seconds later, her guards flooded the room and restrained the masked figure without another shot. Silence returned unevenly. An orange rolled across the stone floor until it touched Serafina's heel. Adrian looked at the service entrance. Only someone with internal clearance could have opened it, but he refused to let that question pull him away from the woman standing beside him. Serafina stepped closer. That wasn't luck. Adrian wiped a streak of marble dust from his cuff. No, neither was the auction. No, and men who come to steal ledgers usually let their targets die when someone else offers to do the work. Her voice had gone quieter. Adrian looked at the damaged cabinet behind her. His mission had just handed him the cleanest possible victory. He could have remained still for 3 seconds. Instead, his body had chosen before his plan could speak. Serafina reached toward his jacket. Adrian caught her wrist. Again. This time, neither released the other. Gunmetal and dark roses sharpened between them, while the security alarm pulsed softly in the background. "Who trained you?" she asked. "People who expected me to finish what I started." "And what did you start with me?" Adrian's gaze held hers. "Something I'm beginning to regret." Serafina's expression changed by a fraction. "Destroying me?" Adrian released her wrist. "Saving you." He turned toward the elevator. Serafina's voice stopped him before he reached it. "Adrian." He looked back. She stood amid broken marble and flashing red security lights, her hand resting on the counter where his glass of water remained untouched. "Tomorrow morning," she said, "you're going to tell me exactly why a man sent to ruin me keeps choosing to keep me alive." Edit at 9 the next morning. Adrian entered the war room and found his stolen identity projected across 20 feet of black glass. The screens painted Serafina's face in cold blue light, while the ventilation system whispered overhead, carrying the clean scent of steel, coffee, and her unmistakable dark roses. Adrian's photograph filled the center display. Beneath it sat his real name, former affiliations, known aliases, and a single red designation: Infiltrator. Serafina stood beside the steel table with her sleeves rolled to her elbows. "You're late." Adrian checked his watch. "By 40 seconds. I noticed." The elevator sealed behind him. No guards entered. Adrian slowly removed his coat and laid it over a chair. "If this is an interrogation, you forgot the intimidating audience." "I don't need an audience." Serafina touched the screen. The display changed to footage from the auction. Adrian leaving the elevator, Adrian approaching the north corridor, Adrian standing beside the maintenance panel. Then another clip appeared. Adrian pulling Serafina behind the marble column. "I knew who you were before you walked through my doors." His gaze shifted to her. "No, your invitation was good. Your financial history was better. But you chose a dead broker's favorite whiskey when you built the identity." She tapped the table once. "He stopped drinking 3 years before he died." Adrian gave a quiet laugh with no humor in it. "And you let me inside anyway. I invited you farther." Serafina crossed the room and opened a narrow drawer beneath the terminal. Adrian's hand moved toward his jacket before remembering it lay across the chair. She withdrew a small black device and placed it on the steel between them. His data key, the one that should still have been inside his pocket. Adrian reached down. Empty. Serafina had taken it during the chaos in the penthouse. "You copied 94% of my ledger," she said. Then you stopped. The soft electronic hum of the screens suddenly seemed louder. Adrian picked up the key. "Maybe I ran out of time. You had 11 seconds remaining." She stepped closer. You stopped when the protected identities entered the queue. Adrian's thumb pressed against the device's hard edge. Serafina had not merely watched him. She had measured every choice. So the auction attack? He asked. Not mine. The keycard. Deliberate. Pier 9. A test. His jaw shifted. Those families weren't. No, her answer came instantly. Never them. Adrian set the data key down. You used me. Serafina's eyes hardened. You entered my house planning to destroy me. And apparently you found that entertaining. I found you useful. Adrian swept the device from the table and crushed it beneath his heel. Plastic snapped sharply against steel flooring. Serafina looked down at the broken pieces. Months of preparation disappeared beneath his shoe. There, Adrian said. Not useful anymore. He turned toward the elevator. Serafina stepped into his path. Adrian stopped inches from her. Her scent sharpened in the cool air, gunmetal beneath roses. Move. No. You wanted to know why I keep saving you. His voice lowered. I don't know anymore. That's the problem. Serafina's gaze flicked briefly to his mouth, then returned to his eyes. You were supposed to steal my ledger, deliver it, and leave my organization exposed. You seem remarkably calm about that. Because your plan stopped being the most interesting thing in this room the moment you chose me over it. Adrian's fingers curled at his sides. Don't romanticize hesitation. I'm not. She moved closer until the blue light from the screens divided their shadows across the floor. I'm telling you that every door you thought you opened, I unlocked first. Every position you thought you stole, I gave you. You believed you were getting close enough to destroy me. Her voice became almost a growl. Adrian, I was bringing you closer to see what you would choose when destroying me finally became easy. The elevator chimed behind him, doors opening onto an empty car. He could leave. Serafina stepped aside at last. Adrian looked at the elevator, then at the shattered data key beneath his shoe. He did not move. Serafina's mouth curved by a fraction. That, she said softly, is what I was waiting for. The elevator doors remained open behind Adrian, but he reached past Serafina and pressed the button that closed them. The soft chime died. Steel panels slid together, sealing the war room in blue screen light and the low electrical hum of servers. Beneath Adrian's shoe, fragments of the destroyed data key glittered like black glass. Serafina watched the elevator disappear behind him. So you're staying. For 5 minutes. Generous. Adrian crossed to the steel table and planted both palms against its cold surface. You knew my mission. You let me inside. You handed me access because you wanted to see whether I'd finish the job. Correct. Don't mistake my hesitation for loyalty. Serafina walked around the table. Her heels clicked once, twice, then stopped. I haven't. Adrian straightened. Good. Because I can still walk out of here, contact the people who sent me, and give them enough from memory to cripple your operation. Her amber eyes stayed fixed on him. Then why haven't you? The ventilation whispered overhead. Adrian could smell bitter coffee cooling beside the terminal, steel warmed by electronics, and the gunmetal edge of her alpha scent. He reached into his jacket and removed his encrypted phone. One command would reconnect him to the faction waiting for his report. His thumb hovered over the screen. Serafina did not reach for it. Do it, she said. Adrian looked up. You think I won't? I think you came here with a ruthless plan because plans are easier than people. His thumb pressed the screen awake. You know nothing about me. I know you could have let me fall twice. She stepped closer. You didn't. Adrian opened the secure channel. A countdown appeared. 60 seconds until automatic connection. Last chance, he said. Serafina's gaze dropped to the timer, then returned to him. 53. 52. You're standing in my headquarters threatening to destroy everything I built, she said. And somehow you still expect me to ask you to stay. Maybe I want you to admit you made a mistake bringing me this close. 41. Serafina's jaw tightened. She closed the remaining distance until barely a foot separated them. You belong beside me. The words came out as a low snarl, rougher than they had. In the auction hall, Adrian's thumb froze above the phone. You don't get to decide that. Then decide it yourself. 30 seconds. Adrian lifted the phone between them. This is who I am, Serafina. No, that is who you planned to be before you met me. 22. His breathing slowed. Her dark rose scent sharpened in the chilled room. Move, he said. Serafina didn't. Make me. 15. Adrian's hand closed around the phone until the edges pressed white marks into his palm. You're playing with the wrong man. Then stop proving me right. 10, 9. Adrian reached for her shoulder, intending to move her aside. Serafina caught his wrist. Their eyes locked. The countdown flashed 6, 5. Tell me to leave, Adrian said. Serafina's fingers loosened around his wrist. Instead of answering, she leaned forward and kissed him. It lasted only a heartbeat, restrained and startlingly gentle, nothing like the challenge in her voice. Then she stepped back immediately, leaving space between them. Adrian stared at her as the phone vibrated in his hand. Connection established. A voice came through the speaker. Vale. Confirm the Moretti operation. Adrian looked at Serafina. She had made no attempt to stop him now. No command. No threat. Only silence. The voice repeated, Vale, confirm. Adrian raised the phone. Serafina's eyes never left his. His ruthless plan was waiting for one word. Adrian disconnected the call. The dead phone screen reflected Adrian's face for 1 second before he dropped the device onto the steel table and crushed it beneath his palm. Plastic cracked in the blue-lit war room, sharp against the steady hum of the servers. Serafina remained 3 feet away, her hand resting at her side, giving him space after the kiss that had just severed the clean line between mission and choice. Adrian pulled the encrypted memory card from the broken phone. They'll know that you disconnected? That I changed the plan. He crossed to the main terminal. Cold air poured from the floor vents around his shoes, carrying the metallic smell of electronics and the faint dark rose trace of Serafina beside him. His fingers moved across the keyboard. My original extraction window closes at noon. When I fail to deliver your ledger, they won't wait. Serafina's eyes narrowed. What happens? Adrian brought up the city map. Red markers appeared across Moretti territory. Pier 9, the auction house, 3 warehouses, 2 financial offices. They activate the contingency I designed. Serafina went perfectly still. Adrian tapped Pier 9 first. Freeze your accounts. Another marker. Expose your routes. Another. Turn every rival syndicate toward the gaps. He looked at her. I built the collapse to happen fast enough that you couldn't reorganize. Ruthless. That was the point. Serafina stepped beside him, shoulder nearly touching his. And now, Adrian glanced at her, the memory of that brief kiss still too immediate to dismiss as strategy. Now I dismantle my own work. He opened a concealed access portal and entered a sequence from memory. The screen flashed red. Authorization required. Adrian removed his silver signet ring, pressed its inner chip against the reader, and unlocked the network. Serafina watched without speaking. Once I do this, he said, every contact I built will know I turned. Then don't do it because I kissed you. His hand stopped. Serafina's voice was quiet. Do it because you choose what happens next. Adrian looked at the red markers. For months, they had represented victory. Now he saw the dock workers he had escorted through the cold garage, the people whose names he had refused to copy, and Serafina standing under broken chandelier light while someone tried to remove her before he could. He pressed enter. 1 red marker vanished. Then another. He rerouted Moretti funds beyond the seizure net, burned 2 surveillance channels, and sent false route data through his former network. Alerts began exploding across the screen. Access revoked. Asset compromised. Internal breach detected. Serafina moved to another terminal. Tell me where. Pier 9 first. Her fingers flew across the glass. Done. Move every crew out of the east warehouses. Already moving. They worked shoulder to shoulder as the room shifted from blue to pulsing amber warnings. For the first time, Adrian was not studying Serafina from across a battlefield. He was building one with her. Then the largest screen went black. White text appeared. Vale, you have until midnight. Serafina read it. That's not automated. No, Adrian knew the protocol. Midnight meant his former faction had abandoned the financial takeover. They were coming directly. A second line appeared. Step away from Moretti and walk out alone. The ventilation shut down as the system entered emergency isolation, leaving the room suddenly warm and silent. Serafina turned toward him. You can still take that offer. Adrian removed his signet ring from the reader. The metal was hot against his fingers. He looked at the elevator, then at her. Hours ago, standing beside Serafina had been camouflage. Minutes ago, Her forbidden kiss had made him disconnect a call. Now the choice demanded something permanent. Adrian placed the ring on the table and brought his heel down. The embedded chip snapped. No extraction, he said. No return channel. No second plan. Serafina's gaze dropped to the ruined ring. Adrian turned back to the city map and switched every remaining Moretti defense line from red to green. They wanted my answer by midnight. He pushed the final command through. They just got it. Serafina stepped beside him as the countdown appeared across the glass. 14 hours, 7 minutes, and 32 seconds. Adrian did not move away. When they come for you, he said, watching the seconds disappear. They come through me first. Edit at 11:58 p.m. Every light in the Moretti Tower went out except the green tactical map glowing between Adrian and Serafina. 2 minutes remained on the ultimatum. Emergency strips burned along the floor, staining the steel walls a dim red, while somewhere 40 stories below, engines growled against the curb and elevator brakes screamed inside their shafts. The ventilation had restarted, pushing cool air across Adrian's face with the smell of ozone, warm circuitry, and Serafina's dark roses. She stood at his right shoulder. Beside him, exactly where she had demanded he stand the first night. 3 vehicles at the west entrance, Serafina said, watching the security feed. They're early. No. Adrian touched the map. They're distracting you. He dragged 2 fingers toward the service elevators. The real team comes through here. Serafina looked at him. Your design. My design. Then break it. Adrian seized the emergency console and entered the override sequence he had written months earlier. Steel barriers slammed across the west lobby. A second later, the service elevators froze between floors. The building shook faintly beneath their feet as Moretti security repositioned. 30 seconds, Serafina said. Adrian opened a citywide broadcast channel. That's enough. He uploaded the remaining records from his former network. Not Moretti's protected ledger, but his own operational files, shell companies, takeover orders, payments, authorization chains. The evidence scattered simultaneously to rival syndicates, financial watchdogs, and every neutral broker whose cooperation had made his original plan possible. Serafina's eyes moved across the rapidly multiplying transmission receipts. You're burning them publicly. I'm making sure they can't rebuild quietly. The countdown reached 0. Midnight. For one breath, nothing happened. Then the war room doors unlocked from the outside. Adrian turned. Serafina stepped with him rather than behind him. The doors opened onto the corridor, washed in white emergency light. 3 men stood at the far end. Their weapons remained lowered, but their formation was unmistakable. The man in front wore the same silver signet Adrian had destroyed hours earlier. Vale, he called. His voice carried cleanly across the polished concrete. Step away from her. Adrian walked forward. Serafina matched him stride for stride. You were given a way out, the man said. I used it. Adrian held up the tablet, showing thousands of completed transmissions. Just not the way you expected. The man's face tightened. You destroyed years of work for Moretti? No. Adrian glanced at Serafina. Gold from the city lights slipped through the narrow, armored windows, catching the edge of her profile. I destroyed my work because I finally understood what it was built to do. She manipulated you. She tried. Serafina's eyebrow lifted. Even now. Adrian almost smiled. Then she gave me a choice. The men at the end of the corridor looked toward their phones as notifications began arriving. One after another. Their accounts frozen. Their allies withdrawing. Their leverage dissolving in real time. Adrian's former commander stared at the screen, then back at him. The balance in the corridor had changed without a shot. Moretti guards emerged from the stairwell behind the 3 men. The commander slowly raised his empty hands. Serafina spoke into her earpiece. Escort them out. They leave this city tonight. Adrian turned sharply. That's it. You changed your plan. Her gaze remained on the defeated men. I can change mine. Minutes later, the corridor stood empty. The tower's main lights flickered back to life, warm gold replacing emergency red. Adrian leaned one hand against the cool window. His phone was destroyed. His signet was broken. His network was gone. There was nowhere waiting for Adrian Vale outside these walls. Serafina approached, stopping beside him without touching him. You lost everything you came here with. Adrian watched the city glitter 40 stories below. Not everything. Serafina turned toward him. Adrian faced her fully. At the auction, Standing beside you was camouflage. Tonight it cost me every exit I had. And yet you stayed. Adrian's gaze held hers. Because after that kiss, finishing my plan became the one thing I knew I couldn't do. For once, Serafina had no immediate answer. Adrian stepped past her toward the war room, then stopped at the doorway. He looked back at the woman he had crossed the city to destroy. You said I belonged beside you. His hand rested against the steel frame. Tomorrow, Serafina, you're going to show me what that actually means. At 9 the next morning, Serafina placed a second chair beside hers and waited for Adrian to decide whether it meant anything. Sunlight poured through the 40-story windows, turning the black glass war room gold at the edges, while the city below murmured with distant traffic. The sharp electronic alarms of the night before were gone. Fresh coffee steamed on the steel table, its bitter warmth mixing with cedar polish and the familiar trace of dark roses. Adrian entered wearing the same dark suit, minus the hidden transmitter, the encrypted phone, and the silver signet that had once identified exactly where his loyalty belonged. His gaze stopped on the chair. That's your explanation? Serafina rested one hand on its back. Part of it. The tactical wall behind her no longer showed red and green territories. Instead, the screen displayed a restructuring order bearing her authorization. The protected housing funds remained untouched. Pier 9 remained protected. The operations Adrian had exposed were permanently closed. I spent years making this organization impossible to challenge, she said. Last night proved that also made it too easy for one person to control. She touched the screen, dividing executive authority into separate channels. No more single throne. No more loyalty purchased through fear alone. Adrian studied the changes. And where do I fit? Serafina looked directly at him. Where I told you from the beginning. His eyes moved back to the empty chair. Beside you. If you choose it. The distinction hung between them. At the auction, those words had been a weapon. She had snarled them before a room of predators and turned Adrian into something the Underworld believed she possessed. Now there were no witnesses. No guards. No rival alphas waiting to interpret the gesture. Just 2 chairs and enough morning light to expose every expression they might otherwise have hidden. Adrian walked toward the table, but did not sit. You knew I came to destroy you. Yes. You used me to expose my own intentions. Yes. Then you kissed me while I was seconds away from completing the mission. Serafina's fingers tightened once against the chair. Yes. Why? For the first time since he had entered Moretti territory, she looked away before answering. Her gaze settled on the city beyond the glass. Because every time I gave you the opportunity to become the man your plan required, you chose differently. She faced him again. And because I wanted to kiss you. No strategy softened it. No threat disguised it. Adrian's mouth shifted at one corner. That might be the first uncomplicated thing you've ever said to me. Don't get used to it. He stepped closer. That kiss cost me my network. No. Your decision afterward cost you your network. Serafina moved her hand from the chair. The kiss only forced you to stop pretending the decision hadn't already begun. Adrian looked at the seat again. Then he reached for it and pulled it away from the table. Serafina's expression hardened by a fraction. Adrian dragged the chair across the floor, its legs making a low scrape against polished steel, and repositioned it closer to hers. Not behind it, not opposite it, but perfectly level. Then he Saturday, if I'm beside you, he said. We define what that means together. Serafina sat in the other chair. Agreed. No tests. Agreed. No claiming me in public without asking. Her eyebrow rose. That one sounds personal. It is. Agreed. Adrian glanced toward her. And no assuming one forbidden kiss gives you permanent authority over me. Serafina leaned back, amber eyes catching the sunlight. Then perhaps it shouldn't remain the only one. Adrian stood and offered his hand. She looked at it, then took it and rose. This time, when he leaned toward her, he paused. Serafina closed the remaining distance herself. Their second kiss was brief and gentle, chosen without an audience, danger, countdown, or command. When they separated, Adrian did not retreat across the room. He returned to the chair beside hers. Outside, the city continued beneath them, unaware that the man who had entered Moretti territory intending to bring its ruler down had destroyed his own ruthless plan instead. Serafina reached for her coffee. Adrian opened the first reconstruction file. Their shoulders nearly touched as the screen brightened before them. She had once snarled that he belonged beside her. In the end, the kiss changed his plan, but choosing that place for himself changed everything.